Hi.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. Hello, people at the Short Bus Debate Club bus stop. This is Brian Courtney, and
The bus is running a little bit late this week.
no shit, all week long. So obviously that was Darren. He's
Hello.
sitting here with me, and today we are talking about hookers, prostitutes, sex workers in the media, television, movies, whatever. The reason all of this got spawned again is because I was watching The Deuce on HBO, and there were a lot of hookers in Times Square in the 70s and early 80s, or in brothels at least in the early 80s. Now, not so much anymore because they cleaned it up, and there's an M&M store and a Sephora store and a Nike store and places to buy theater tickets and all kinds of shit. So Friday we're going to talk more about the urban renewal type stuff, but now we're going to talk about, hookers in movies, because we talked about hookers in real life on Monday. So so I don't know if these guys do it on purpose, or if they're just trying to be funny, or if they're just trying to be dramatic, or if they're really trying to tell a story and make people think. But as a kid, I watched Dr. Detroit. Dr. Detroit was basically this bad old lady named Mom shot these hookers pimp, and they were looking for a new one, and they found Dan Aykroyd kind of by accident because he was walking down the street, and he said, "No, I will not be your pimp. I just won't do it." I don't even think he could say the word. I think he said a anyway, he took on the job and managed them. That annoying girl from The Nanny was in that movie, and Donna Dixon, which is Dan Aykroyd's wife, was in that movie. Those were the big draws, Dan Aykroyd and those two. He ended up pretending to be a pimp because he had to try to scare Mom off, and there was this fight in the junkyard. But basically, that movie asked the question that I ask all the time is, why the fuck bother with a pimp? I mean, you take all of the woman's money, or man, or whatever, all of the workers' money, and you treat them like shit, you beat them up, you do all kinds of stuff that is fucking wrong in every way, shape, or form. But all of these prostitutes seem to be drawn to it for some reason, and I don't know if it's a self-esteem thing, if it's just a complete fucking, like, I'm a fucking total idiot and you can take advantage of me thing, or if it's a I gotta please you thing, or a combination of all three.
I don't think that I would think about it in terms of like practicality when you're looking at the way that it's presented in film. In certain instances, sure, right? Leaving Las Vegas, where she gets trapped with those three guys and she gets fucking raped anally. I mean, that's like there's a certain pragmatic position there, but like you take a goofy ass movie like Risky Business, where it's like this fantasy, like a fucking senior in high school's fucking fantasy, where you meet a fucking prostitute because your fucking girlfriend, and you have all these fucking friend prostitutes of hers come over to your house, and you make a fucking shitload of money. Of course, it's to replace the egg, right? Isn't that what the idea?
And now we're being chased by Guido the Killer Pimp.
the other, but Tom Cruise gets to play the high school fucking, it's just a stupid male fantasy movie. I mean, when it really comes down to as a high school, I mean,
sure, but those girls even in that movie wanted to leave the pimp. I mean, the girlfriend
But
did.
they still used Tom Cruise as...
And they still went back to the pimp. But that's what I'm saying, is that I think in real life,
there's a psychology to it.
Yeah, I know that these are goofy movies. I know nobody would pick Dan Aykroyd as a fucking pimp, just like nobody would pick fucking Henry Winkler from Night Shift as a pimp.
Is that what he was in that one? I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was a fucking morgue worker, and I can't even remember how the hookers ended up finding him. So that one was Henry Winkler, Michael Keaton, and Diane from Cheers, who I don't know. Shelley Long, yeah. Okay. So those three were the draws in that movie.
Was she a hooker?
Yeah, she was a hooker. Okay. And they made a ton of money, and they were only paying Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler a cut, 10 or 15%. I can't remember what it was.
And they were using the morgue as a
base of operations.
I can appreciate the darkness of
and that. They were driving around the girls in a hearse.
They didn't do any necrophilia or anything like that.
No, nobody fucking no. Well, no dead body fucking. So, maybe they were making a joke saying you don't really need a pimp, you need a manager, but I just don't fucking get it. So, you and I, on Monday's episode, we were talking about how with the laws the way they are, they're not protecting the women the way the women need to be protected. And that goes, you mentioned leaving Las Vegas, things to do in Denver when you're dead. Fairuza Balk gets raped with a beer bottle anally. There's just a lot of movies where that happens, even though a hooker isn't necessarily the predominant character in the movie.
Even in Pretty Woman, there's the ancillary guy, Carlos, up on the fucking second floor of the Banana, was her whatever, Julia Roberts' girlfriend's sort of like nominally acted as an intermediary. It's funny how like all the themes are the fucking same. It's not just that they have the pimps, but that her friend takes all of their money and fucking buys drugs from the pimp / drug dealer. So, enter Richard Gere, without any hamsters up his butt.
I haven't seen that fucking movie since like when it came out. I have no idea. I vaguely remember the banana thing. I know Richard Gere and Julia Roberts were in it. I went to the drive-in to see it, but I don't know for sure. I know she was a hooker. Mm-hmm. I was laughing earlier because I was thinking, like you just now said, Risky Business is just a stupid male fantasy movie. And I think, like, Pretty Woman is a stupid female fantasy movie, and not just females, but maybe hookers. To say that Pretty Woman is a good movie is like saying Made in Manhattan is a good movie, and that's just a fantasy movie for maids. And
I've never seen Made in Manhattan.
I haven't either, but I know
she meets the guy and then ends up getting married to him, and he's a super fucking rich motherfucker.
Or Mannequin is a fucking fantasy for mannequins.
Yeah, Kim Cattrall. I totally see that. Is it bad that I know that? And then the guy from Almost Fire, I can't remember what his fucking name is.
I don't know. Andrew.
And then Andrew McCarthy. Yeah, pretty. Yeah.
So they're all pretty much stupid movies. But what I was getting at, kind of before I started spinning out of control, was that we were talking about the protection of these women.
Yeah.
And in Sin City, he says, well, they're in Old Town now. And in Old Town, the women take care of themselves. And basically, all of the women there are badasses. If the cops get out of control, they make them leave. But
they're killers in that, too, aren't they?
They will definitely kill you. And Miho is this badass little... The actress, I'm guessing, is Japanese, some sort of Anglo-Saxon mix, because she's got some white features to her, and it might not even be Japanese. I don't know. But she's a fucking badass. She can chop your fucking head off with one swipe of her sword. But so they protect themselves. Well, then... Later on, they find out that they killed that cop, and the one girl starts freaking out. She says it's going to be the bad old times again. The cops are coming back, and the pimps and the drugs and all of this stuff. If they find out, it's going to be bad again. Well, I think that kind of, and not that, Frank Miller's graphic novel or the movie that was made from that graphic novel is necessarily an accurate portrayal of life. But I think it's still, pretty true that the fact that it's illegal allows for cops to shake these girls down. It allows for pimps to do whatever the fuck they're gonna do.
It would take if you start to regulate things, you're going to take the female out of a position of, well, I mean, you're going to take anybody that's going to be the actor, whether female, male, trans, whatever your position, out of the subjugated position to where they can actually sort of like call the shots if it's regulated like that. But I just wanted to make her name is Devon Aoki. Her father was the dude that created Benihana, and Japanese, German, and English. So
okay, so I was right about the Japanese thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the white thing, really, for that matter. But thank you for looking that up.
It is weird how like these different kind of like fantasy components. It's either like a fantasy component or a nightmare. Like whether like so like of course Leaving Las Vegas is like the worst kind of. I mean, she gravitates to a guy who has declared his intention to kill himself, to drink himself to death, and of course it's because like her background. The guy that was her pimp was this Latvian guy who appears to be schizophrenic or something to that effect, has some serious mental illnesses, who ends up getting killed by the people that he's affiliated with in his area of, or at least it's implied, like she walks out of the room.
Mafioso things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when the rubber meets the road, where the fantasy that they're both sort of like employing through the darkness, I mean, him, and then what her background is, reality sets in, and it's just it's a nightmare.
Well, and that guy, I mean, it definitely was a nightmare, but I mean, he was fucking rich, and he sold all of his shit to buy booze so that he could drink himself to death, down to the fact, like, I think once he got to Vegas, he ended up selling his Beamer and his Rolex or some fancy fucking watch,
for $900 or $300 or
something
like that,
just to buy some more booze. But I mean, he had a lot of money, so I think he really could have drank himself to death, and probably would have in a fairly quick.
But he was a
turnaround.
He was a screenwriter, so he wanted to kind of. I mean, the way that he talked all the time, he wanted to sort of go through the process in kind of a magnanimous fashion, and no doubt because she picked up on his illusions and his weirdness, like she sort of became his. Not his muse did, but like his audience, I guess I would say, like in those moments, because she even said, I like the weird little shit that you say here.
I think she was a lot of things in that movie.
She
was
on some level.
Maybe a muse. I think on some levels she was a girlfriend more than a prostitute.
Yeah.
I think in a couple of scenes she might have been more a mother than.
There was some eternal things. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's a fucked up fucking movie. But so like in terms of like I said, there's like the dreams, there's like the fantasy dream side of things, where whether it's the guy living out the fantasy or the girl meeting the the knight in shining armor, who comes up at the end with the fucking whatever. I can't even fucking think about that. But then like say like Basketball Diaries, which isn't about prostitution, but when prostitution enters the story.
Because doesn't he end up being gay for pay?
He's
so
a
that he can buy...
crackhead, yeah. He trades, and that's the same thing as what happens in I'll suck your dick for a rock. What movie was that?
Well, that was Menace to Society.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean,
I'll suck your dick.
But
what,
I mean, that's
motherfucker?
That's a theme.
Y'all want a cheeseburger?
That's a theme that comes out over and over and over again in films. The darker side, where people, there's always trading. Oh, you know what I didn't think about? Prostitution in a more real sense was True Detective.
Yeah.
The way that he interacts with the way they both interact with them, and
Well, that was some fucking nightmarish shit too. I mean,
because she was a prostitute, I forgot. Yeah, the one that dies in the beginning. Yeah, she was a
she
prostitute
was a
and a drug addict.
prostitute
Yeah,
that they fed LSD to.
and
If you
Crystal.
haven't seen that first season, and it's the best out of all
Yeah,
three of them.
I mean, if fuck, spoiler alert, nothing we could say here could ruin the beauty of the composition of the character development that is constructed.
But Woody Harrelson, you know, because he was cheating on his wife with the court clerk,
Yeah.
and then that ended, and he was supposed to be good, but then he ended up banging the hooker
the
that
little
wasn't a
girl
hooker anymore, who now worked at T-Mobile.
who, when he met her,
Was
she
a
was
hooker.
underage,
Right.
and he gave her money to tell her not to be a hooker, and he ended up fucking her 4 years down the road, and
Multiple times.
in every orifice. You know, I mean, you want to talk about weird, dark fucking shit, but still brilliant. I mean, if you want a good look at the layers of darkness and the dark side of humanity, beautiful.
And you know, I mentioned The Night Shift and Dr. Detroit just because I thought that those were funny fucking movies. I watched The Night Shift again not too long ago, or it's just called Night Shift. But you know, those dark shows come from somewhere, and I think a lot of times, again, I don't know for sure if they're trying to be dramatic or if they're trying to be funny when they write these things, but I'm thinking that it is to sort of illuminate people and let them know that it's not all fucking roses and Christmas presents and shit. You know, it's not shiny, happy people. It's some fucked up shit that happens. I mean, fuck. From where we live, I'm pretty sure hookers roll this stroll right here.
Yeah, I'm certain. Yeah, on the backside of the house. Yes.
By the train tracks, and it's not trains like trains, like it's light rail. It's a conveyance, public transportation. And the main reason they probably roll this stroll now is because, you know, for so many years in the 60s, Bob Dylan commented on the hookers on East Colfax. Well, the hookers obviously throughout the 60s and 70s got bumped off of East Colfax and West Colfax for that matter. And they were kind of in the back neighborhoods. Like I'd go to parties off of Colfax and just find fucking old nasty rubbers in the yard and shit. So if you can't eliminate prostitution, whether it's a movie or real life, if you move them from point A, they're going to go to point B because that's how they make their money, to buy drugs or feed their kids or whatever the fuck it is. They're not going to go away. So all you're doing is brooming them from one place to the other. And that's not a movie. That's real life.
But it could be illuminated in film as well, or shows or whatever. I want to hit on another kind of weird little spin-off, and I don't think that I really started thinking about it again until So I brought up that show that I watched about the kids in Calcutta who were born in brothels, and I don't think that when we talk about entertainment that it would be appropriate to sideline the sense that people watch documentaries for entertainment. And there's something that kind of like struck me. I was talking to Janae the other day about this, but there's this concept called tragedy porn, right? And like the idea is that you sit there and you watch these horrible things on a show that are true, that are real. So like you've moved away from the fantasy into the concrete reality. And you're seeing these. I mean, like I said, there's when I said the little girl whose great grandmother was in the brothel, and her grandmother was in the brothel, and her mom was in the brothel. Does that mean that she is going to, it's the only reality that her, for generations now, her family has had access to? But still, and I know I've been beating on liberals a little bit this week, but there is something about the liberal mind that. To sort of like try to atone for the darker side of things that come out of life, we look at these things, we see these things. And I remember when Janae was living in Lebanon, and it was when the Syrian war was really starting to like ramp up in the background, and all the refugees were starting to pour to the border and starting to pour across, and into Turkey and Greece and all these kinds of things. And she was doing work with UN, and she would take these buses down and go and do these things to try to like help people and whatnot. And I kept telling her to be safe, be safe. And finally one day she said, "Fuck off! Don't fucking tell me to be safe. There is no being safe in this environment. If you're in a fucking bus that gets bombed, you die." There was an instance where something like that had happened, where she happened to not go that day, and some really bad shit happened like that. But sometimes there's a tendency in our culture, where we will watch these things from afar, like voyeurs, through the lens of documentaries in certain instances, like prostitution, and see these horrific things, and we think because we're observing it and seeing it and making ourselves conscious of it that somehow we're like helping to. No, we're not, because we're still perpetrating the system that allows for it to continue to perpetuate itself. And that doesn't mean that we like we've been trying to suggest. We're not trying to stop anything. We're trying to create the conditions to where we're not being hypocrites, and to where people have the best opportunity at being doing what they think is appropriate with their lives, and being safe as they do it, not
Right.
having other people fucking dominate them. So sorry, I'm shutting up.
Be a hooker. If you don't like being a hooker, then go be something else. But the way things are right now, if they start doing this, whatever, then they're kind of stuck there, because you can't go into a place and say, well, here's my my application or my resume or whatever, and they say, oh, well, what have you been doing the past 6 years? Oh, well, I've been blowing people in my car for 4 of those. The other 2, I wasn't blowing people in my car. I was doing all kinds of crazy shit, but it was in a hotel room because I decided to class it up a little bit. You can't.
I think we've been missing something like that for a while. That was a good delivery. I appreciate that.
You can't do that. But if it's legal, then you can say, I thought the money was going to be better than it was, so I turned tricks for 6 years. Turns out it wasn't that good.
But I was really good at them. Here's some of my resources. You can talk to these people.
Can we call some of your references?
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So they, I don't know. I think if we legalized it, not only would protections be better, but then, and that's for both sides of the line. That's for people that are paying for it and people that are, charging for it. That's for the wife at home who may get some shit because her husband's off banging hookers. It's for everyone. But then there's the financial part of it too, because now instead of the pimps making 75, 80, 90, 100% of what these girls are making, we could charge them whatever. I mean, 25%. I think that's fair. 15%. That's an income tax. So more money into the coffers. Whatever. So I know you really wanted to talk about deconstructing Harry.
Oh, I didn't. No, dude. I mean, the only thing that I just say about, and of course, you're not allowed to say anything positive about Woody Allen lately. He's been married to his former stepdaughter forever. I mean, for 30 years now, to be perfectly honest with you. So whatever fucking weirdness that goes on in that guy's head, still probably one of the best film writers in the history of the fucking world. But the way that he approaches prostitution is kind of, in your face and a little bit comical sometime. In Deconstructing Harry, he has Cookie come over to the house, and he says, "I want you to tie me up and hit me a little bit and give me a blowjob." She says, "You want me to he hit you and tie? No. First tie me up and then hit me and then give me a blowjob." I mean, and so let's get the monetary part out of the way. I mean, it's very pragmatic. It's very straightforward. they end up going and having a very nice day the next day with his friend who ends up dying in the car and his son.
You know what you just said, the way that you said that, it reminded me of Natural Born Killers. Now, the conversation where this occurs didn't have anything to do with hookers because Mallory Knox and that cop, Jack
Scagnetti?
Yeah, were in
I fucking rule.
the cell talking. And he's like, she goes, well, what do you want? And he's like, I want you to kiss me and pinch my nipple. She's like, that's very specific, Jack. Well, the reason that reminded me of it was because of the way that conversation flowed. But then it reminded me that, again, if you want to talk about some dark shit, that sick motherfucker was killing hookers throughout the movie. And then
That's right,
he's
I forgot
going
about
after
that.
them because they're mass murderers and he hates them. So it was like some sort of weird self-loathing mass murderer.
But it was fantasizing being the thing that he started to play out. I mean,
Well, I don't know because so he said that his mom got killed by Charles, not Manson, the dude in Texas who shot her. Is it Charles Wright?
the guy from the
Yeah, from the A&M Bell Tower.
the bell tower. Yeah.
So he said his mom died, and that's kind of what kicked it off. So this entire time, from the time he was a kid, he's wanting to kill people, and apparently he didn't start, or it didn't show it, but he didn't start until he, became an adult and started killing hookers. But and all of those hookers thought that they were going to get away, or that they were safe because they had already fucked him, and everything was fine. He didn't kill them until the deed was done and they wanted to go. There's something like that in Heat too.
I think I only ever watched that movie one time.
Dude, that is a great fucking movie, and that's about bank robbers and hookers and whatever. De Niro, Kilmer.
One other though, Woody Allen, just for 2 seconds. Mighty Aphrodite. So he's adopted a son, and he wants to go. His son's a genius, and he wants to go figure out what the background is. And they have like this, like a chorus, like from old Greek plays, that's in the background saying, don't go do that, because if you open up that can of worms, then all kinds of weird shit's gonna come out. And dude, the writing of that fucking movie is fucking awesome. It's fucking brilliant. So he ends up going and finding the girl, and of course she's a hooker, and she's a
He ends up putting her in a play, right?
he doesn't. No, that's not that one. But so she's a hooker, and she also does porn. That's right. And he wants to help her change her life, and she's like, "Fuck you." But I'm not gonna say anything. But in terms of a good fucking shit talking, funny, moving fucking Woody Allen movie about prostitutes, Mighty Aphrodite is fucking awesome.
Well, I don't know for sure, and I didn't realize until tonight that Woody Allen had done 48 movies. But out of all of them that I've seen, and I'm not the Woody Allen buff that Darren is, but I don't think I've seen one where he didn't mention prostitution at least once.
Or masturbation. He likes prostitution and masturbation.
Which
He's got a fixation on sex a little bit.
On sex that you have to pay for, and
or that you have with yourself,
right?
Because it's sex with someone you love, according to Woody Allen.
Wonder if you start like paying yourself.
That might like really feed your ego,
Well, it might feed your ego, and it could do something for your 401k too. Like, just take a percentage out of every paycheck.
You're just giving yourself a commission for
Right.
really good sex that you're giving to yourself.
I just jerked off. That's another $10.
Didn't know that this was going to go there, but what are you going to do, right?
So, I wish I should have written more of them down. I just thought about so many of them where, hookers were involved. And I mean, again, I don't know for sure it's the oldest profession, but I mean, in Mighty Aphrodite, they talk about this Greek play. Well, we know for sure in Greek times and in Roman times there were hookers. Game of Thrones shows hookers, and some of them are happy hookers. Again, I think that's the light and the dark, and some of them are not. And I think that that's just the way it is, regardless of how much money you make. Those ones that are making a lot of money aren't necessarily the only happy ones. They might be kind of depressed too.
I made a point in the torture episode about how torture today is something that is hidden. Like back in the past, torture was something that was, they did it out in the open. It's prostitution is very similar. Like in today's world, in the U.S. at least.
Well, it is.
It's totally.
It's no wonder we are completely fucked up about sex, because we have been. It has been drilled into our fucking head since we were little. Don't fucking jerk off. Don't have sex before marriage. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do any of these things.
Pleasure bad.
Yeah, anything. You're going to go to hell. I'm just glad that at a fairly young age I said, fuck that. I don't need any of that shit. They're all fucking liars. But it's not just the religious aspect. That's the fuck that part when I was younger. The government, and a lot of that has something to do with religion or some sort of fucking, I don't know how to describe it. What would you call it? A sense of we're better than you, a sense of we're better than that. We don't need hookers because we're protecting these women. You said something about liberals, and Dyro always calls it the white person syndrome. They've all got to go out and do something for somebody.
That was a shout out, Dyro.
Yeah, he's not one of the 6 that's listening.
Is he back in Colombia?
No, he's here. He's got like fucking 9 kids, dude.
It is really fucking weird that the first part of the Bill of Rights is the Establishment Clause. I mean, Congress will make no law respecting an establishment of religion, but it's in fucking
everything.
In everything
but that didn't happen right away. That wasn't until after the turn of the century. Well, the turn of, I don't know, like I said, so the Mann Act was in 1910, and that's when all of the weird sex shit started to happen, because before that, you could go into a fucking bar and buy a bottle of laudanum or a fucking ball of opium, pick 2 or 3 of the best hookers you wanted, and go and have a fucking party, and then come down and play poker until fucking 7 the next day.
I don't think that every bar was like Deadwood, though, motherfucker.
It's not just Deadwood. I mean, the stuff that I was talking about in 1892, that was those parlor houses on Market Street, and they were talking about gambling and everything else. So it wasn't just Deadwood. I mean,
but that puritanical sentimentality, it wasn't. It's not like it just suddenly popped up in 1910. I mean, there was,
No, I think women's suffrage had something to do with it, because they were always talking about booze and sex. They what was it, temperance, that they always preached? Temperance. Don't drink, temperance. Don't fuck, temperance. I think a lot of things had to do with it, but I think that for the most part, the majority of people were doing it. So it was a minority of those people that cared.
That's still,
it's speculation. It is speculation, and I don't even know how the fuck you're going to find it, because a lot of those people that I'm talking about couldn't fucking read or write. So It's not like they're going to have a diary talking about, oh, well, on the 4th of July,
Or you're passing it.
we were celebrating independence, and I gathered 3 prostitutes, a ball of opium, and some laudanum.
And we're passing it down. Like you're sitting on grandma's lap and she's like, yeah, I used to suck some cock.
Well, I hope, and that's a fucked up family if that ever happened. I would hope, regardless of what sort of prostitution you were doing, that wasn't something that you just shared. I mean, you could say, yeah, I was a prostitute, but, maybe keep some of the details to yourself.
I got to tell you, dude, that Maria was very open in her conversations. Of course, she was a young lady, but that was one of the more.
She was also talking to you, though.
Yeah, no, it was. Yes, it wasn't in the family, and it wasn't passing it down from.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't think that. I think that if she had a kid, I think that her kid. They weren't talking about it, but I think the kid would know what was going on.
Dude, we have some serious fucking problems. So, I always joked around, and I actually had a fucking stand-up bit, and I did it twice and fucking killed. But I talked about my grandma and how she was a slut. And my mom gets pissed when I fucking say that. She was not. Well, she kind of was, especially for the time, because my mom was born out of wedlock. And then it turns out she has an older brother that was born out of wedlock. So that's 2 different guys that she had sex with that, ended up having a kid.
Sure.
And that was in the 1940s. So they've lied to us for so long, and we have this thing, like they say, well, I didn't do that, and, you can't have sex before marriage, and it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. Well, if my grandma was doing it in the 40s, and that they really did say it was wrong then. I mean, that was when they fucking sent kids to convents or locked them in a fucking basement for, 23 hours a day so that none of the neighbors saw them. But I always joked around about her being a slut, and it wasn't an insult. I loved my grandma. And there's some slutty girls that I didn't necessarily love, but I liked a lot. There's nothing wrong with being a slut. And we have this shit built into us, again, because they beat it into us from the time we were fucking toddlers or could listen, that none of this happened. Well, I'm not positive, and she's probably going to hate this even more, but there's a strong possibility my mom was a slut. I love her to death too, but I mean, just because you have sex, I was a slut. Just because you have sex out of wedlock,
yes, you were,
does not mean that you're a bad person. It was just a fucking term that some cocksucker.
Did you ever see the movie
came up with?
Kinsey?
No.
It's a great film. It's about a guy who he studied gall wasps, right? And then he was teaching some biology thing in college, and something came up to where kids started asking questions, like students were asking questions about sex, and he realized that there was no scientific analysis about sex. It was late 1910s, middle 1920s, and he applied for a grant with the Rockefeller Foundation to study sex in a scientific way. So what they did was they went around. At first they did women, then they did men. But they would do interviews, and he vetted the people that would do the interview process, because you had to really get people comfortable so that they would be honest about what their backgrounds were with regards to sex. And his father was a preacher. He realized how much that affected him growing up when he finally got married, and then when he started to go through this process of vetting these people, and then he got the money, and they did these crazy interviews with women, and shit came out about everything under the sun, multiple partners, gay, straight, fantasies that galore. They really were very good at their process of interviewing these people. They were halfway through, the man and there was such a crazy reaction to the first book that the Rockefeller Foundation pulled the funding. Yeah, but
I think they did something similar with Masters and Johnson?
Yeah,
I think originally they were porn people, but then they started studying sex because they were trying, and I could have this wrong. I might be way off base, but I think they were trying to pay for a movie or pay for a study or something. But they started studying it, and I think that they tried to develop fucking panels that you put underneath your bed to generate electricity from the friction. And I don't know if I
you mean like they were like using sex as a way of creating energy kinetically.
Right.
That's fucking hilarious. But I mean, like you had suggested though, the second that everything comes out of the closet and you start to see all these different complexities with regards to, and you know what they were identifying as perversions, which actually what Kinsey was suggesting and his study ended up suggesting were not perversions at all. The concept of sluttery is not anything that's really meaningful. That sex is a natural and something that we should maybe we should take out of the closet and celebrate it a little bit more, like as humans, as opposed to like being prigs, which is a word they used at the beginning of that movie.
I think that's probably a true statement. I mean, we're all fucked up, and like I said, my mom is gonna be fucking pissed about that. And my ex-girlfriend, she's gonna be pissed because I used the word slut, and she said there's no such thing as a slut. People just enjoy sex, and that's true. Slutty people enjoy a lot of sex with a lot of different people, and that's fine.
I think you just like using the word slut. You're just throwing slut around a lot right now.
I am. And it is because of that. But I mean, all of it, if you go all the way back to like Sodom and Gomorrah, dude, they just used all of that stuff against us because that was stuff that was being done.
I don't think I really believe in pillars of salt.
No, I don't either. But I mean, that's just, they're trying to scare people into not doing what they were already doing.
Yeah, abstinence, yeah. Just one side point. He gets his father to finally do an interview with him. And his father, they fitted him because he was a chronic masturbator. They fit him with something to keep him from jerking off, right? So he realizes in this moment, the Liam Neeson's is the Kinsey character, right? He, like Wyatt, is that his father was so just crazy religious, because he had been taught to shame. Like shame was like the only thing that you were supposed to relate to sex. There's nothing wholesome or positive about, even though like you're even in the act of procreation. Like I mean, like everything was shame. So like it's quite an interesting scene because you can see it kind of breaks Liam Neeson because he sees his father as his father truly is, because of how he's been bashed for ever being like thinking that having pleasure is a positive thing or anything.
And that's just some sad shit, dude. Yeah. So, strangely enough, when I looked at Masters and Johnson, the first link that came up was the Kinsey Institute. So he's got a bunch of information on Masters and Johnson, and I might have been confusing the movies that I had been watching because this doesn't mention anything about the fucking generating electricity thing. But it does say that they are best known for the human sexual response cycle, which are the physiological responses to sexual stimulation. And their excitement, plateau, orgasmic, and resolution. Resolution's usually when I'm putting my pants on and leaving.
That's a fucking douchebag. You really are a fucking jackass.
Well, that's been resolved. So
let it be resolved.
We are at 44 minutes and 30 seconds. Any other movies we need to tell these people about?
No, I think this went in a lot of crazy directions that I did not foresee,
Fucking A.
The good, the bad, true. The ugly, and the the sluts.
That is true. It is indeed. And I think, you know how I said that all women are crazy just on a scale and all guys are assholes but on a scale?
I remember you said that. Yeah.
I think maybe all people are sluts but on a scale.
Dude, I think post my first long-term relationship, I definitely had a little slut moment.
You got to break out every now and then.
You do. It helps you to even things out in the long run.
Just to forget, if anything else. All right, so then Friday we're going to talk about urban renewal.
Yeah.
Gentrification.
Yeah, the wonderful side of
white flight, reverse white flight.
Pumping money into areas and kicking fucking poor people out.
Yeah, so that's Friday. I think by Friday we should have next week's episodes ironed out a little bit better, but I could be wrong. So just listen on Friday and
we might
let
be
us
late
know
again.
what you think.
We'll try to get it worked out tomorrow night, but we might be late again. I got some homework to do. So.
All right, people. Well, thanks for riding with us. And
720-334-ROLL.
Twitter Short Bus Debate, TikTok Short Bus Debate Club. Email is shortbusdebateclub@yahoo.com.
Have we gotten
No, none of our 6 listeners wants to fucking talk.
You could be the first. Even one of you fucking intelligence motherfuckers could send us an email.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Make sure and put your title and phone number in the email, though.
I think you're going to be less interested with the ones this week, though. I mean, there's nothing really all that controversial about talking about sex. I mean, like if you really try to institute some of that stuff, then maybe, but we'd just be really pissing off the fucking religious right.
Well, I was really going to talk shit about the GOP when you started talking about liberal people, because you said, ours is out in the open and whatever, and the GOP, as far as prostitution goes for them, they're against abortion unless their side piece gets pregnant and then they want an abortion right away.
We'll call that this particular voting cycle. We'll call that the Herschel Walker rule. All right, just since it's been out there anyway, right? And Jimmy Swaggart didn't he get caught with a fucking prostitute in the?
No, not Swaggart. It was the other one. It was Jim Baker.
Oh, dude, Swaggart got caught too. I'm sure he did, dude. I'll find the song, but
maybe it was him.
Frank Zappa he took Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and turned it into Jimmy Swaggart getting caught with a hooker in a fucking in a place in Houston or something like that. It's fucking hilarious, dude.
I don't know. There were a couple of different Jimmys, but either way. So yeah, the GOP are a bunch of hypocrites because they use hookers, and they are definitely pro-abortion when it benefits them. So. That's all I had to say in closing.
That's all I got to say about that.
All right. See you on Friday.
Later.